can have chaos in your home for year after year after year after year when you have detoured from God.
Dr. Tony Evans talks about what it takes to experience family revival.
Parents, if you want to save your children, you better go to Bethel. It is the place where you meet God.
This is The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans, author, speaker, senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas, and president of the Urban Alternative. Sometimes there's no harder place to live out your Christian faith than right in your own home. Today, right in your own home. Today, Dr. Evans explains how you can change that as he takes us to Genesis chapter 34. Let's join him.
Perhaps you're a woman who grew up in a family with an angry mother, and you see that anger transferred from her to you, through you, to your own children. Perhaps you grew up watching as a man an abusive father, or perhaps being no father there at all. And you're watching transferred in your own language, in your own propensity to violence, in your own neglect, in your own lack of being able to hug your own son or daughter because nobody ever hugged you. And you find the dysfunctionality perpetuating itself in your own home. An inherited dysfunctionality that is ripping yourself, your home, your children apart. That's the family of Jacob. Almost from the time of his birth, his family was in chaos. He connived with his mother to rip the blessing from his brother and to deceive his aging father. That would lead him to a life of deception and of confusion. This man would enter into a civil rivalry with his brother Esau that would threaten his very life. And he would grow up in a family of unforgiveness, where Esau would seek to kill him. He had 12 kids by 4 different women. He would see worked out in his own situation, in his own family, the continued flow of the family in which he grew up. His daughter was raped, spoken of in chapter 34 of Genesis. Her brothers were so incensed at the rape that they connived a plan that turned them into mass murderers. And so they slew a whole city full of men by getting them to agree to circumcision, and in their moment of weakness, they would kill them. To fully appreciate it and to fully understand it, you're going to have to read all the story. One sermon will not allow us to fit in all the gory details of Jacob's life. But our theme is revival. And so today I want to talk about family revival, where God returns to your home and brings order out of chaos and turns confusion around into something that is meaningful and productive. In chapter 35, right after the rape and mass slaughter, Jacob is now terrorized. Look at the end of verse 34, because all these men have been killed. Verse 30, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and Perizzites, and my men being few in number, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, and my family and my household. He's in a bad situation now, because now that this mass murder has occurred, he knows that these folks are going to rise up and do to his family what his family did to the men of that city. And it's a mess. In chapter 35, verse 1, we start off with 2 words, then God. Remember, whenever you see the word then, you've got to ask the question, when? When the family crisis had gotten to a point where it was too big to handle. When the mess in the family had gotten so bad that there was no solution. When the whole household was being threatened. Jacob says, you brought this trouble on me and the house, where the whole family is about to be frayed and turned upside down. Then God, in the middle of a family crisis, God showed up. Why does God show up in the middle of a family crisis this deep? Because it is not till it gets this deep that we're prepared to listen. It is not till it gets so deep that everything is about to unravel that God can get our attention in the way God needs to get our attention, because we know we can't fix this. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than us. This is bigger. This thing is out of control. Then God said to Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel, live there, make an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. Now you read that and it doesn't seem like much. But this whole story revolves around that statement. Arise and go to Bethel. Bethel is where Jacob met God the first time. If you were to read chapter 28 of the book of Genesis, you will discover that when Jacob was running from Esau, remember there was a sibling rivalry between him and his brother. His brother was trying to kill him. In that crisis, earlier in his life, there is over a 20-year gap between chapter 28 and chapter 35. You've covered 20 years in those few chapters. It's been 20 years since Jacob has heard God's voice. It's been over 20 years since Jacob has heard God speak to him. Back in chapter 28, I will flip there briefly. Jacob is running from his brother Esau, and when he comes to this place, he has a dream, verse 12, of a ladder going up between earth and heaven, where the angels are going up and down the ladder. God reveals himself in verse 13, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and of Isaac. He makes a promise to him, your descendants are going to be great, like the dust of the earth. You're going to spread the west and to the east and the north and the south, verse 14. I'm going to be with you wherever you go. Verse 16, Jacob wakes up from his sleep. Surely the Lord has been in this place and I did not know it. He was afraid. How awesome is this place? This is the house of God, which means Bethel. So Jacob, verse 18, rose up early in the morning, took a stone, put it under his head, set it under his pillow, poured oil on top of it. He called the name of the place Bethel. However, previously the city had been known as Luz. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and keep me on this journey that I take, and will give me food to eat and garments to wear, I will return to my father's house in safety. Then the Lord will be my God. This stone which I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth or tithe to you. He says, because I met God in this place, I'm going to name this place Bethel, which means house of God, and I am going to come back to this place. I am going to return to this place. Between chapter 28 and chapter 35, Jacob knows he's supposed to go back to Bethel, but he doesn't. He gets detoured along the way. He winds up in a place called Shechem. He buys some property there and now makes his home there, and that's when all hell breaks loose. In other words, he doesn't do what he said he was going to do. He detours from what God's plan was and what God's direction was. Chaos breaks out in his life until he faces a crisis again, like he did earlier with his brother, only this time is with his children. And now the chaos in his own home, which was like the chaos in his father's home, produces God coming to him a second time, telling him, aren't you supposed to be back in Bethel? Wasn't the agreement you were going to return back to the house of God so that I could fulfill my promise to you? In other words, the reason why there was chaos in his house is that he detoured from the plan and will of God. And this detour spiritually showed up in his kids, showed up in his wives. God says, look, now that things are bad enough and you can't fix it, you need a bailout. Now that things are bad enough and you can't straighten it out, maybe I can get your undivided attention. Maybe now you will go back to the place where you heard my voice and live there. You're not supposed to be living here. This is not your home. You are treating this foreign place like this is where I told you to go. You're living in the wrong location. You're living in the wrong house. You're living in the wrong city, and you want to know why you got a hot mess at home. You're not located in the right place. You have detoured from my plan and my will. There's chaos in your house. Go and live in Bethel. That's your home. Because that's my home, the house of God. Make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau over 20 years ago. Now, what does this say? This says you can have a jacked up family for over 20 years. You can have chaos in your home for year after year after year after year when you have detoured from God.
Dr. Evans will tell us how to ditch that detour and get back on the right road when he continues our message after this.
When you were married, you probably got lots of advice on how to start your life with your spouse. But did anyone tell you how to pray together? As a couple, the most secure foundation you have is your relationship with God, and prayer is the greatest tool. In Tony's brand new book, Kingdom Prayer, Touching Heaven to Change Earth, you'll discover what makes Kingdom Prayer different from any prayer you've prayed before and learn how to connect with the confidence and peace it was designed to provide. As you learn how to pray in one accord, you'll build unity in your marriage and power in your partnership with each other and with God. If you pre-order your copy of Kingdom Prayer by October 3rd, you'll get it with some great free extras, starting with the download of Tony's book on revival, America, Turning a Nation to God. But there's more, and you can get all the details by visiting TonyEvans.org. Time is running out, so don't wait. Visit TonyEvans.org today.
And while you're there, please consider making a generous donation toward the ministry of The Alternative. It's only because of faithful friends like you that we're able to keep Tony's teaching on this station. And to show our appreciation, if you get in touch with us and make any contribution, no matter the amount, we'd like to send you the CD version of Volume 2 of our current series, Marriage Matters, as our thank you gift. Contact us today to make the arrangements before this special offer runs out. Just visit TonyEvans.org or give us a call day or night at 1-800-800-3222. That's 1-800-800-3222. Well, right now, here's Dr. Evans with more of today's message.
So there was a spiritual detour, but there's good news here. The good news here is that God spoke to Jacob. God was still talking to Jacob, even after 20 years. It's a bad family situation. It's messed up kids. It's messed up wives. It's a messed up father and husband, but God still spoke to him. You know when it gets bad is when God no longer talks to you, or you no longer are willing to hear if he does talk. God spoke to him Jacob had not fulfilled what he was supposed to do, and it showed up not only in his life, but in his own children. Parents, if you want to save your children, you better go to Bethel. If you want to save your family, you better go to Bethel. It is the place where you meet God. He says that's where God spoke to you, was at Bethel. How do you know when God is trying to get you somewhere else? Because he allows too much chaos where you are. And the more I try to make it work, the messier it gets. Verse 2, so Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods which are among you, purify yourselves, change your garments, because we going to Bethel. He ready to go now. He's the head of the house. There are idols in the house. He knows there are idols in the house. He's been hanging out with idols in the home for over 20 years. How did the idols get in the house? Well, if you know the story, all the way back in chapter 31, he loved Rachel. Rachel was fine. Rachel had it going on. He loved him some Rachel. But when he got Rachel, according to chapter 31, Rachel hid the gods of her fathers and took those gods with her. So he got Rachel and her idols. So for now, 20 years, idols have been living in the house. An idol is a foreign god. An idol is not a real God, but it's something treated like a God. And whenever you invite an idol, you invite a demon, because idols are demonized elements. So anything can become an idol. Your television can become an idol if it causes you to replace God in your life. In other words, if you can always watch your TV show but not get around to spending time with God, television became an idol. If you can TiVo what you can't miss, but you can't get ever around to TiVoing time in Scripture, television has become an idol in your life. It's whatever it is that replaces God in your life, that becomes an idol. That is an idol. Rachel had brought the idols with her in chapter 31. And that means that contamination entered the home. The thing about it is, at some point, Jacob discovered it and didn't do anything about it. We've got this mess because we've strayed from God and then brought foreign gods with us. We've got to get rid of the idols. He says the second thing is purify yourselves. Remove the sin out of your midst. Thirdly, change your clothes. Change your garments. To change the garment was symbolism of reorienting the life. We're not going to keep doing the way we're doing. We're not going to keep wearing the same old clothes over and over and over and over again. You have said to people in your family, to your children, why don't you change your clothes? You're wearing the same stuff. You're functioning the same way. Jacob finally mans up. He was the head of the family, but he was a bad leader. He was a bad leader because he did not control the spiritual level in the home. He didn't lead his family in God's way. He didn't make sure that there were no idols. And so the kids ran amok. Everything ran amok because he was no longer in control. Listen, men, if you are going to be the man God has called you to be, if we are going to be the men God has called us to be, if we're going to man up to our responsibility, that means we're looking out for idols that try to sneak in the home, even if your pretty wife brought it there. Leadership is not just a title. Leadership means overseeing the atmosphere where I live. Overseeing the atmosphere where I live. He says, you kids have damaged the household. God says, you need to go to Bethel. It is your spiritual departure, mister, that has put the family in this situation. And so he says, I will arise, let us arise. And I love this. Jacob says, okay, I led you wrong, now I'm going to lead you right. He says, you can serve the other gods of all these other nations, but in Joshua 24:15, as for me and my house, I'm setting a spiritual agenda. The question is, particularly for the men, is are you setting the spiritual agenda for your home, or are you just talking about I'm the leader? If you're not setting the spiritual agenda, you may be a good provider, and that's great. We need more of those. But you should be setting the spiritual atmosphere for the household. As for me and my house, we shall serve the Lord. He arises and goes to Bethel. I'm going to make an altar there, because that's what God told me to do in verse 1. We're going to have a family worship. Family worship. By the way, men, are you leading your family in family worship? An altar? You're supposed to be doing that. I'm supposed to be the pastor here. You're supposed to be the pastor there. And you do it around the dinner table. You don't have to find a special time. You don't have to create a special time. You just use the dinner table. And you use it for more than eating. And you turn the television off, you turn the radio off, and you say, okay, we're going to talk, we're going to make sure the family's going well, we're going to make sure you're obeying your mother, we're going to make sure your work is being done, and then we're going to spend some time with the Lord. You say, well, I don't know what to go over. Yes, you do if you were in church on Sunday. All you do is take what I have already prepared and repeat it. You don't have to be a seminary graduate, you just have to be a thief. That's why we got the devotion up on the website. You can pull it down and you can say, okay, let's review what we heard on Sunday and talk about how we're going to apply it in our home. That's what you do. You don't create something new, you just steal it. He says, and I will build an altar in Bethel. He arises and he goes there. He says, the reason I'm going back to God, the house of God, Bethel, is he answered me in the day of my distress. As they journeyed, verse 5, there was a great terror upon the cities which were around them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. Wait a minute. Remember in chapter 34, verse 30, he's terrified that these folks are going to jack him up because of what his sons had done to all the men of the city. But because he manned up, rose up, and went home, it says the terror of the Lord, verse 5, came upon the city and they did not bother him. Because he was now going right, God entered in and protected him in a bad situation. You may have been making mistakes for 20 years, but if you'll get up today, when he started moving right and the family started moving right with him, it says the Lord intervened into his crisis situation and didn't let the circumstance he was in mess him up.
Dr. Tony Evans, talking about what it takes to experience family revival, part of our current 14-part series, Marriage Matters. Remember, if you contact us right away and make a contribution of any amount to help keep Tony's teaching on this station, all 7 CDs in Volume 2 of this collection will be yours as our gift. Get details today at tonyevans.org before time runs out. And when you do, don't miss your chance to take advantage of that special offer on Tony's upcoming book, Kingdom Prayer, due to be released in October. As you heard earlier, if you pre-order it now, you'll not only be among the first to receive it, but you'll get a collection of free extras along with it. Visit tonyevans.org today to get the details. That's tonyevans.org. We also have staff members standing by in our phone center to help with your resource requests. You can reach them day or night at 1-800-800-3222. That's 1-800-800-3222. Tomorrow, more from Dr. Evans on how to make revival contagious enough to infect your entire family. I hope you'll join us. The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought to you by the Urban Alternative and is made possible by the generous contributions of listeners like you.